My 7-year-old grandson Tommy tugged at my sweater and whispered words that made my blood run cold. "Grandma Rose, I heard Mama and Papa talking in the kitchen this morning. They said today is the day they put you in the old people's place and take your piggy bank money." I smiled down at his worried little face, but inside, a fire started burning. My daughter Linda and her husband Mike had no idea they just woke up a sleeping dragon. Before we continue, if you're new here, welcome to Granny's Voice. Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me tell you how I ended up living with two people who saw me as nothing more than a walking wallet and free babysitter. 6 months ago, I slipped on ice outside my cottage and broke my hip. Linda rushed over with tears in her eyes, insisting I couldn't live alone anymore. "Mom, what if something worse happens? Come stay with us until you're better." What she really meant was come pay our bills and watch our kids for free. But Tommy's innocent warning changed everything. While he played with his toy trains on the living room carpet, I quietly walked to my bedroom and called my old friend Martha, who worked at the bank downtown. "Martha, it's Rose Peterson. I need to move some money around today. Can you help me?" She sensed the urgency in my voice. "Of course, Rose. What's going on?" "Let's just say some people are about to learn not to count their chickens before they hatch." Next, I called my neighbor's son Jake, who was a lawyer. We'd watched him grow up from a little boy riding bikes to a successful attorney. "Jake, it's Mrs. Peterson from next door to your mom's house. I need legal help today. Can you meet me somewhere?" He sounded concerned. "Mrs. Peterson, are you okay? Where do you want to meet?" "The coffee shop on Main Street at 2 o'clock. And Jake, bring papers for changing wills and bank stuff." The phone call to my bank confirmed what Linda and Mike didn't know. After selling my house and adding my late husband's pension money, I had saved much more than they realized. Way more. I hung up and looked at Tommy, still playing innocently with his trains. This sweet boy had just saved his grandmother from being robbed by his own parents. I ruffled his brown hair. "Tommy, sweetie, want to help Grandma with a special project today?" His eyes lit up with excitement. "What kind of project, Grandma Rose?" "The kind that teaches people to be honest and kind to family." At exactly 1:30, I told Tommy we were going for a walk to get ice cream. I grabbed my big purse with all my important papers inside. Ever since my husband died 2 years ago, I'd learned to keep everything important with me. Something told me this day might come, and I was ready. We walked 3 blocks to Bean Their coffee shop where Jake was waiting with his briefcase. He looked worried when I explained what Tommy had overheard. "Mrs. Peterson, they can't just take your money or force you into a nursing home." I nodded firmly. "That's exactly why I called you, Jake. I want to change everything today before they come home from their shopping trip." Jake opened his briefcase right there at the coffee shop table. "What exactly do you want to do?" "Everything, Jake. New will, new bank accounts, and I want papers that say they can't make decisions for me anymore." While Tommy happily ate his chocolate ice cream cone, not understanding the serious grown-up business happening, I was about to turn the tables on Linda and Mike completely. Sitting in Jake's small office while Tommy played with toys in the waiting room, I thought about all the signs I'd ignored. After I moved in with them, Linda started opening my mail. "Just helping you stay organized, Mom." Mike began asking strange questions about my savings account. "Just making sure you're getting good interest rates, Rose." The biggest red flag should have been when they insisted I add Linda's name to my checking account. "For emergencies, Mom. What if something happens to you?" What they didn't say was that they wanted easy access to pay their credit card bills with my Social Security money. I'd already given them $15,000 to help with Tommy's school fees and their car payment. Looking back, I felt foolish for missing all their tricks. Every time I mentioned maybe getting my own small apartment, Linda would guilt me. "Mom, Tommy loves having his grandma here. You're so good with him. Besides, at your age, wouldn't you feel safer with family nearby?" At my age, I was only 72, not 92. I could still drive, cook, and think clearly. Mike was sneakier but just as calculating. "Rose, your experience raising Linda is so valuable. Tommy's doing great in school because you help with his homework every day. Translation: keep doing free work while we go out to dinner twice a week. The worst part was how they'd been cutting me off from my friends. You seem tired, Mom. We told your book club friends you needed to rest this week. Your church friends called, but we didn't want to bother you since you were napping. Slowly but surely, they'd isolated me from everyone who cared about me. But they made one big mistake. They underestimated their mother and grandmother. Jake slid papers across his desk. This removes Linda from all your accounts and makes me your legal helper instead. This moves your money to a new bank they don't know about. And this, he smiled, is your new will. I signed each paper with a steady hand. What about the money I already gave them? Jake thought for a moment. Since there's no written agreement, we can say it was a loan that needs to be paid back if they break their promise to care for you. I looked at my watch. 2:45. They'd be home by 4, expecting to find their cooperative old mother ready to be shipped off to Sunset Manor nursing home. Instead, they'd find a woman who just took back control of her life. Tommy poked his head into the office. Grandma Rose, are we done with the boring paper stuff? Almost finished, sweetheart. One more quick stop. Our final stop was First National Bank, where I'd kept my money for 30 years. Tommy sat in the children's corner with a coloring book while I met with Mrs. Wilson, the manager. Mrs. Peterson, this is quite unusual. You want to move everything today. Everything. Checking, savings, my CD accounts, all of it to Commerce Bank across town. Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened as she looked at her computer screen. That's a very large amount of money. Are you absolutely sure? I thought about Linda's face that morning when she hugged me extra tight and said they'd be gone most of the day shopping. How they'd asked me to stay with Tommy instead of coming along, which was unusual since they normally wanted me to help carry bags. I've never been more certain of anything. The transfer took over an hour. $437,000. My husband's life insurance, our retirement savings, the money from selling our house, and every penny I'd saved during 40 years of careful living. Money they assumed would be theirs once they had me declared unable to think for myself. Mrs. Peterson, Mrs. Wilson said carefully, if you don't mind asking, why the sudden rush? I smiled sweetly at her. Let's just say some people are about to learn that honesty is the best policy. By 3:30, Tommy and I were back home. I sent him to his room to play with his action figures and got busy in the kitchen making Linda and Mike's favorite dinner. Meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. If this was going to be my last meal in their house, I wanted them to remember it. As I peeled potatoes, I imagined the conversation they probably had while shopping. The appointment at Sunset Manor is at 5, Mike would have said. We'll tell Mom after dinner. By tomorrow morning, she'll be in her new room and we can start managing her money. They'd probably already spent my money in their minds. Linda had been looking at new furniture for months. Mike had mentioned wanting to buy a boat. They'd even talked about taking a trip to Hawaii once they had access to my accounts. At 3:45, I heard their car pull into the driveway. I smoothed my apron and checked my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like any ordinary grandmother making dinner for her loving family. Perfect. The front door opened and I heard their voices, louder and more cheerful than usual. They were overcompensating, probably feeling guilty about their secret plan. Mom, we're home, Linda called out. Something smells wonderful in here. Just making your favorites, I called back. Tommy's in his room playing. How was your shopping? There was a pause. Good, Mike answered. Just picked up some things we needed. I smiled to myself. In about an hour, they were going to discover that while they were shopping for my future, I was shopping for my freedom. Dinner was like watching a play where everyone knew their lines except the audience. I served their plates with extra care, asked about their day with genuine interest, and complimented Linda's new haircut. They squirmed in their chairs like kids who'd broken something, exchanging nervous looks when they thought I wasn't watching. This meatloaf is delicious, Mom, Linda said, though she was barely eating. You really outdid yourself tonight. Well, I wanted tonight to be special, I smiled warmly. You never know when things might change dramatically. Mike nearly choked on his mashed potatoes. Change? What do you mean by that? Oh, just life in general, dear. Nothing stays the same forever, does it? They managed to finish dinner, though the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tommy chatted happily about his day at school, completely unaware of the storm brewing around the dinner table. At 7 o'clock, Linda cleared her throat nervously. Mom, could we talk to you in the living room? Tommy, go play upstairs for a while. Here it comes, I thought. The moment they've been building toward all day. We sat down in the living room. Linda and Mike on the couch, me in my favorite chair by the window. Linda fidgeted with her hands while Mike stared at the floor. Finally, Linda spoke up. Mom, Mike, and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider a different living situation. I tilted my head with innocent confusion. Different? You mean like getting my own apartment again? Not exactly, Mike jumped in, his voice artificially cheerful. We were thinking more like assisted living. Somewhere with people your age, activities, nurses available if you need help. You mean a nursing home, I said flatly. It's not just a nursing home, Linda said quickly. It's a beautiful community. We visited Sunset Manor today. They have wonderful programs, and you'd make new friends. You've already made arrangements without asking me, I said, not really asking but stating a fact. Another exchange of guilty glances. We thought we'd explore options, Linda said weakly. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. They expected tears, begging, or at least confusion. Instead, I smiled calmly. Well, that's interesting timing, because I spent today exploring options too. What do you mean? Mike's voice had a sharp edge of worry. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Jake's contact. Jake, it's Rose. Could you come over now? I think it's time to explain everything. I could see panic creeping across both their faces. Mom, what are you doing? Linda's voice was getting higher. Taking care of business, sweetheart. Just like you taught me to do. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. Jake will be here in 10 minutes to discuss some changes I made today. You might want to sit back down. The doorbell rang exactly 10 minutes later. I opened the door to find Jake with his briefcase and a serious expression. Good evening, Rose. Linda, Mike. Jake, I said cheerfully, would you mind explaining to my daughter and son-in-law what we accomplished today? Jake settled into the chair across from Linda and Mike, who looked like they were facing a judge. Where should I start? Jake asked, opening his briefcase. The legal stuff seems like a good place, I suggested sweetly. Jake nodded. As of today, Linda no longer has any legal authority over Rose's financial affairs. Any power of attorney arrangements have been cancelled. Linda shot to her feet. Legal authority. We weren't trying to control anything. Sit down, honey, I said quietly. We both know that's not true. Mike's face had turned pale as paper. Rose, I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because 7-year-olds hear more than you think they do. I looked directly at him. Tommy told me about your kitchen conversation this morning. The silence that followed was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Linda slowly sank back onto the couch, her face showing pure panic. Mike's mouth opened and closed without making any sound. Jake, I continued, would you mind explaining the financial changes? Certainly. Rose has moved all her assets to new accounts at a different bank. This includes approximately $437,000, representing her life savings, insurance money, and the proceeds from selling her house. You can't do this, Linda finally found her voice. That money, you gave us some of that money. Actually, Jake said calmly, I've looked into the situation. There was no formal loan agreement. The money was given with the understanding that Rose would live here permanently and be cared for. If that arrangement ends, she has every right to ask for repayment. With interest, I added with a sweet smile. Mike ran his hands through his hair frantically. Rose, please, let's talk about this reasonably. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, But I do understand. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. I understand that you were planning to have me declared unable to think clearly so you could control my money. I understand that you've been treating me like unpaid help while isolating me from my friends. And I understand that you've been counting money that was never yours to begin with. We were trying to protect you. Linda's voice was desperate. You're 72 years old. Living alone isn't safe anymore. I'm not living alone. I'm living with people who see me as a burden and a piggy bank. There's a big difference. Jake cleared his throat. There's one more matter we need to discuss. My smile turned mischievous. Oh yes, the best part. Jake pulled out another folder. Rose has also updated her will. The previous version left everything to Linda with money set aside for Tommy's education. The new version makes some significant changes. Linda's face went from pale to green. What kind of changes? I decided to deliver this news myself. The kind where Tommy gets everything when he turns 25. You and Mike get absolutely nothing. Mike let out a sound like a wounded animal. You can't do this to us. We have a mortgage, car payments, Tommy's future to think about. You should have thought about Tommy's future before you decided to steal from his grandmother. I was done being nice. Did you really think I was so foolish I wouldn't figure out your plan? Sunset Manor costs $3,000 a month. You had it all calculated, didn't you? Put me away, sell my belongings, control my money, and keep the difference for yourselves. Linda tried one last desperate approach. Mom, I'm your only daughter. Dad would want you to take care of me. That was her biggest mistake, bringing my deceased husband into this mess. Your father, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, worked double shifts for 25 years so we could save every penny for our retirement. He went without new clothes and vacations so we could build something secure. And you were planning to steal it while I was still breathing. I walked to the mantelpiece where my husband's photo sat and picked it up, looking at his kind face. You know what your father would say right now? He'd say I should have done this sooner. I set the photo down and turned back to face them. Jake, there's one more document, isn't there? Jake nodded seriously. The eviction notice. Rose has decided she no longer feels safe living here. Since you have no formal rental agreement, you have 30 days to find her alternative housing. Eviction notice. Mike's voice cracked. This is our house. Actually, I said, pulling out my own folder. That's where things get interesting. Remember that $15,000 I gave you? I have all the bank records showing the transfer from my account to yours, specifically to help with Tommy's school and your car payment. Linda's face crumpled as understanding dawned. You want the money back. Every single penny, plus the 6 months of rent you should have been paying me, plus the money you saved on babysitting, plus compensation for emotional distress. I figure that comes to about $50,000 total. Mike's voice was barely a whisper. We don't have that kind of money. Then I guess you'll have to figure something out. Sell things, get second jobs, do whatever it takes, I shrugged. Or maybe learn to live within your means for once. Either way, you won't be doing it with my money anymore. Jake stood up, closing his briefcase. I'll leave you folks to process this information. Rose, your new apartment is ready whenever you want to move in. As he headed for the door, Linda called out desperately. What about Tommy? You can't just abandon your grandson. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my hand on the railing. I'm not abandoning Tommy. I'm teaching him a valuable lesson about honesty and treating family with respect. He'll understand when he's older why Grandma had to protect herself. I climbed the stairs to pack my things, leaving Linda and Mike to think about the wreckage of their perfect plan. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my lovely new one-bedroom apartment overlooking the city park, watching children play on the swings while drinking my morning coffee. The furnished apartment was costing me $800 a month, much less than what I'd been contributing to Linda and Mike's household expenses. My phone rang. Linda's name appeared on the screen for the 10th time this week. I let it go to voicemail like all the others. When it stopped ringing, I played her latest message. Mom, please call me back. We need to work this out. This has gone too far. Tommy keeps asking where you went, and Mike is having panic attacks about money. We can fix this if you'll just be reasonable. Reasonable. That was rich coming from someone who'd planned to have me committed to steal my life savings. I deleted the message and called Jake instead. How's our case coming along? Slowly but surely. They've hired Robert Chen from Chen and Partners. He's pretty good, actually. Jake's tone was measured. He's arguing that the money you gave them was a gift, not a loan, and that you can't change your mind and demand it back now. And what did you tell him? That we have 6 months of documented evidence showing they treated you as a tenant, not a beloved family member. Bank records, receipts, even grocery bills where you paid for household expenses. I smiled, settling back in my comfortable chair. What else is happening? Chen filed a motion claiming you're not mentally competent to make these financial decisions. They want a psychological evaluation. That wiped the smile right off my face. They're still trying to have me declared incompetent. It's a desperate move. They know they're losing, so they're throwing everything they can think of at the wall, hoping something sticks. Jake paused. Rose, there's something else. They've been asking questions about your husband's pension, specifically whether all the paperwork was filed correctly. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean, filed correctly? I'm not sure yet. Chen hinted that there might be some issues with how the pension benefits were transferred after your husband died. I'm looking into it, but it might be nothing. After I hung up, I sat staring out at the park, unease settling in my stomach. My husband had always handled our retirement planning and pension paperwork. I'd trusted him completely, signing whatever documents he put in front of me without reading every detail. What if Linda and Mike knew something I didn't? That afternoon, I drove to Tommy's school and waited across the street. I watched until I saw him walking toward the playground after school ended. He looked smaller than I remembered, and sadder too. I got out of my car and called his name softly. His face lit up like Christmas morning, and he ran to me, nearly knocking me down with his enthusiastic hug. Grandma Rose. I missed you so much. Why did you leave us? My heart broke a little. I had to, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups have to protect themselves. Are you coming home? He asked hopefully. I can't come back, Tommy. But maybe you could visit me sometime. My new apartment has a swimming pool. His eyes got wide with excitement. Really? A real swimming pool? Really and truly. Ask your mama and papa if you can come see me this weekend. I hugged him tight, breathing in his little boy smell of soap and playground dirt. I love you, Tommy. Don't ever forget that, no matter what anyone tells you. As I drove away, I saw Linda's car pulling into the school parking lot. She must have spotted me with Tommy because my phone started ringing immediately. I didn't answer it. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for Friday morning at Dr. Sarah Martinez's office downtown. I arrived early, dressed in my best blue dress with my pearl necklace. The picture of a well-groomed, competent senior citizen. Dr. Martinez was younger than I expected, maybe 40 years old, with friendly eyes behind stylish glasses. Mrs. Peterson, I want you to know this evaluation was requested by your daughter's attorney, but I work independently. I'm here to assess your mental state objectively, not to take sides. I appreciate that, Dr. Martinez. For 2 hours, she had me do memory tests, problem-solving exercises, and asked detailed questions about my recent decisions. I answered everything honestly, explaining my reasoning for each choice I'd made. You demonstrate very clear thinking and strong problem-solving skills, she noted. Can you tell me about your relationship with your daughter and son-in-law? I chose my words carefully. They're struggling financially, and I believe they began seeing me as a solution to their money problems rather than as a person with my own needs and rights. Do you think your recent actions might seem extreme to some people? I looked her directly in the eye. Dr. Martinez, if someone was planning to steal your life savings and have you committed against your will, what would you consider an appropriate response? She made a note and smiled slightly. Point well taken. That evening, Jake called with news about the evaluation. It went very well. Dr. Martinez is recommending against any conservatorship. You're clearly competent to make your own decisions. My relief was enormous. But Rose, we have a problem. I found out what Chen was hinting about with your husband's pension. My stomach dropped. Tell me. Your husband had been receiving survivor benefits that should have transferred to you automatically when he died. But someone filed paperwork saying you had remarried and were no longer eligible. The room seemed to spin around me. But I never remarried. I've been a widow for 2 years. I know. The paperwork was filed 6 months ago, shortly after you moved in with Linda and Mike. Someone forged your signature on a form claiming you'd married a man named Robert Johnson. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Linda had access to all my mail. She could have intercepted the pension office letters. That's what I'm thinking. And Rose, we're talking about significant money here. Your husband's pension survivor benefits would have been about $2,000 a month. Over 6 months, that's $12,000 that should have been going to you. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of multiple betrayals. My daughter has been stealing from me for months, and I didn't even know it. But here's the good news, Jake continued. Pension fraud is a federal crime. If we can prove Linda forged those documents, she could face serious charges. And you'd be entitled to all the back payments plus penalties. Instead of despair, I felt that familiar fire rising in my chest again. Jake, I want to nail them to the wall. I spent the weekend planning my next move. If Linda thought she could manipulate me with forged government documents, she was about to learn that her mother was tougher than she ever imagined. Monday morning, I called the pension office directly. After being transferred 3 times, I finally reached Mrs. Thompson, a supervisor who could access my file. Mrs. Peterson, I show here that you filed for termination of survivor benefits 6 months ago due to remarriage. Mrs. Thompson, I never filed any such paperwork. I've been a widow for 2 years and have never remarried. Long pause. Mrs. Peterson, this is very serious. If someone forged government documents in your name, that's a federal crime. Can you come in this week with identification and any proof of your current status? I'll be there tomorrow morning with my lawyer. Tuesday morning, Jake and I sat in the pension office while Mrs. Thompson examined my identification and compared signatures. Mrs. Peterson, the signature on the remarriage form doesn't match your signature on file. Someone definitely forged this document. She pulled out another file. And we have your original marriage certificate and your husband's death certificate. There's no record anywhere of you remarrying. My hands were shaking with anger. How much money have I lost? $12,000 so far, and the amount keeps growing every month until we restore your benefits. Mrs. Thompson looked sympathetic. I'm going to start the process to restore your payments immediately, and I'll refer this to our fraud investigation department. What happens to whoever did this? Jake asked. Federal pension fraud carries serious penalties. Up to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. That afternoon, I was waiting outside Linda's workplace when she came out for lunch. Her face went white when she saw me standing by the parking meter. Mom, what are you doing here? Hello, Linda. Nice day, isn't it? I fell into step beside her. I thought we could grab lunch together. There's so much to catch up on. She glanced around nervously, aware that her co-workers were watching. I'm really busy today. Oh, I insist. I already made us a reservation at Murphy's Deli. You remember Murphy's, where we used to go when you were little? Murphy's Deli was crowded with the lunch rush, providing perfect cover for what I was about to do. We ordered sandwiches and made small talk about Tommy until our food arrived. Then I smiled sweetly and said, I had the most interesting conversation with the pension office yesterday. Linda's sandwich fell from her hands onto her plate. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Around us, people chatted normally while my daughter contemplated the ruins of her latest scheme. I don't know what you mean, she finally managed to whisper. I think you do, honey. Federal pension fraud is a very serious crime. 5 years in prison, they told me. Linda's eyes darted around the restaurant like a trapped animal looking for escape. Mom, I can explain everything. Oh, I'm sure you can. Just like you explained stealing my insurance money to protect me. It wasn't like that. Linda's voice was barely audible. We were desperate. Mike lost his overtime hours, and we were behind on everything. I saw the pension letters coming to the house, and I just thought. You thought you'd commit federal fraud and steal from your own mother. Linda started crying right there in the restaurant. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to tell you eventually, I swear. When, Linda? After you had me locked up in a nursing home. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. That's Jake. The FBI wants to interview me tomorrow about your forged documents. Linda's crying got louder, drawing stares from other diners. Mom, please. Think about Tommy. If I go to prison, what happens to him? You should have thought about Tommy before you decided to become a criminal. I stood up and left money for my sandwich. But don't worry about Tommy. He'll be well provided for when he inherits everything. Linda grabbed my arm desperately. What do you mean he'll inherit everything? I leaned down and whispered, I mean you and Mike won't see a penny of my money, but Tommy will get it all when he's old enough to use it wisely. Maybe by then, he'll have learned not to steal from people who love him. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving Linda sobbing into her untouched sandwich. That evening, I sat in my apartment watching the local news. There was a story about elder financial abuse becoming more common, with adult children stealing from their aging parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next morning, I met with FBI agent Patricia Walsh at the federal building downtown. She was professional but kind, explaining how pension fraud investigations worked. Mrs. Peterson, cases like this are unfortunately becoming more common. Adult children often have access to their parents' mail and personal information. What happens now? I asked. We'll investigate thoroughly. If we find evidence that your daughter forged federal documents, we'll pursue charges. The pension office will also restore all your back payments with interest. Agent Walsh leaned forward. I have to ask, are you prepared for the possibility that your daughter could go to prison? I thought about Tommy's innocent face when he'd warned me about his parents' plan. About Linda's fake tears when she'd insisted I move in with them. About all the money they'd stolen while pretending to care for me. Agent Walsh, I'm prepared for whatever justice looks like. A week later, Linda was arrested at her workplace on federal fraud charges. The local newspaper ran a small story, local woman charged with elder abuse and pension fraud. Mike wasn't charged, but he lost his job when the story came out. Apparently, his employer didn't want someone married to a federal criminal handling their books. My phone rang constantly with reporters and distant relatives who'd seen the news. I ignored most of them, but I did take one call. Grandma Rose. Tommy's small voice was shaky and scared. Mama's not coming home tonight, and Papa won't stop crying. Can you come get me? I found Tommy at his friend's house where Mike had dropped him off before heading to the jail to see Linda. The 7-year-old looked lost and confused, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Are you mad at Mama and Papa? He asked as we drove to my apartment. I considered how to answer honestly without destroying his world completely. I'm disappointed that they made bad choices, Tommy. But I could never be mad at you. You're the best grandson in the whole world. Will Mama go to jail like the bad people on TV? Sometimes when grown-ups make very bad choices, they have to face consequences. That helps them learn to make better choices next time. We spent the evening making pancakes for dinner and watching cartoons. Tommy seemed lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his small shoulders. Over the next few months, Linda's case worked its way through the federal court system. She eventually pleaded guilty to avoid a trial and got 18 months in minimum security prison plus 3 years of probation. Mike had to sell their house and move into a tiny apartment. Tommy came to stay with me every weekend and most school holidays. We'd swim in the apartment pool, visit the zoo, and work on his homework together. He was thriving away from the stress and tension of his parents' financial schemes. He never asked about the money or why his parents had gone to such lengths to steal from me. As for me, I joined a senior center, started taking pottery classes, and made new friends who appreciated my company rather than my bank account. At 72, I was finally living life on my own terms instead of being manipulated by people who claimed to love me. The pension office restored all my benefits, plus $12,000 in back payments with interest. Linda and Mike had to pay full restitution for everything they'd stolen, plus penalties and court costs. The total came to nearly $70,000 they didn't have. 6 months after Linda was released from prison, she called me on a rainy Thursday evening. "Mom, it's me. I know I don't deserve it, but could we maybe try to start over?" I looked out my window at the park where Tommy and I had fed ducks that afternoon, watching families enjoy simple moments together. "Yes," I said finally. "But this time, we do it with complete honesty. No more lies, no more schemes, no more treating me like a walking ATM machine." "I understand." Linda's voice was small and humble. "I've learned a lot about myself in the past year. About what really matters." Tommy had grown 3 inches during the time his mother was away, and he'd learned to ride a 2-wheeler bike in the park near my apartment. He was excited but nervous about his parents living in the same city again. "Will they try to take me away from you, Grandma Rose?" "Nobody's taking you anywhere, sweetheart. But maybe we can all learn to be a real family this time. The kind that tells the truth and treats each other with kindness. Some stories end with revenge and bitterness. Others end with forgiveness and second chances. Mine ended with wisdom earned the hard way. I learned that being loving doesn't mean being foolish, and being kind doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest, but that doesn't mean we should stop trusting completely. It means we should trust wisely. Tommy visits me every day after school now, doing his homework at my kitchen table while I make him snacks and help with math problems. Linda works 2 jobs to pay back what she stole, and Mike drives for a delivery company. They're learning to live within their means instead of stealing from family. Most importantly, they're learning that love isn't about what you can take from someone. It's about what you're willing to give freely, without expecting anything in return. Tommy understands that now, even at 8 years old. He brings me drawings he makes at school and tells me about his day. Last week, he made me a card that said, "Thank you for protecting yourself, Grandma Rose. You taught me to be brave." That little card is worth more than all the money they tried to steal from me. It reminds me that sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the right thing to do. If you're watching this and you're dealing with family members who see you as a source of money rather than a person deserving respect, remember that you have more power than you think. Don't let anyone convince you that setting boundaries makes you mean or selfish. Taking care of yourself isn't betraying your family. It's showing them how relationships should work, based on honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Thanks for watching Grandma's narrative today. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments below. Remember, your voice matters, and your story could help someone else find the courage to stand up for themselves too. Until next time, this is Grandma Rose reminding you that it's never too late to take control of your own life. Stay strong, stay wise, and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve respect.